It's happening again. And following a crazy last 24 hours for the Toronto Blue Jays and their fans, reports have circulated surrounding Max Scherzer, Pete Alonso, all these guys being close to a deal with the Toronto Blue Jays. We have some major updates on that front from New York reporters, as well as some other reports that have Jays fans at this point fired up. We're going to break down those new reports, discuss what it means going forward, as well as discuss some interesting roster moves the Jays have made. Stay tuned for all that in this episode, but before we get to it, quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. If you're part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, it's the place to be for daily Jays content. Ladies and gentlemen, again, bear with the quality. I'm going to be moving around a lot over the next few days, but thank you guys for your continued support as the Jays offseason gets crazier and crazier, and quite frankly, it seems to be happening again. Now, we've had some new reports come out. We have some reports from Hector Gomez, but we also have some reports from New York beat writers shedding some light on what the situation is with Pete Alonso. And I obviously had a video on it last night, and it's gotten a little bit, we have some new updates as of this morning. So this dropped from a couple of ESPN writers. Now, I'll just read it out. Alonso, a beloved home star in the Queens, remains a free agent. The Mets, with money to burn, could still use another right-handed hitting slugger. A reunion seems almost too obvious. Add the fact that both sides are open to a 3-year deal with opt-outs. Source says that it's only a matter of believing it won't happen when Alonso signs the dotted lines to play elsewhere. So we're going to start with this. Now, this is obviously from a beat writer or an ESPN writer. So it seems to be happening again when it comes to the leverage front for the Toronto Blue Jays, because as the day went on yesterday, and initially it was, there was some optimism there, thinking that the Jays were going to get the deal done, and then the optimism started to fade a little bit when Ben Nicholson-Smith and Schneider came out and said that a deal wasn't necessarily close to done. And then now you have this morning a couple, and there's another one which we'll dive into, but two different ESPN writers coming out and kind of pouring some gas on the fact that the Mets are open to a reunion with Pete Alonso. And again, I mentioned it in yesterday's video, but it seems to be that it's happening again surrounding the Jays being used as leverage in this deal. Now, I will give credit to, assuming that this is a leverage play, we'll give credit to Schneider and even Ross Atkins, because they, Schneider and Ben Nicholson-Smith are, mouthpieces for Rogers to a degree, right? So I think at this point, that's why that report came out yesterday, because Ross Atkins and company probably said, okay, a deal still could be close to done, but it's not necessarily done yet. So we're going to throw some, we're going to temper expectations when it comes to the Jays signing Pete Alonso and Max Scherzer. We have a pretty big Max Scherzer update as well. Stay tuned for that. But there was another report here from a different ESPN writer saying the Mets have recently spent money elsewhere, Winker and AJ Minter. They could slide Mark Vientos across the diamond. Yes, Alonso is a first baseman on the wrong side of 30, but Alonso is one of the most prolific hitters in the baseball. He's proved to thrive in New York City. Put him behind Juan Soto, give him more fastballs. The Mets have had a great winter, and basically, you see here, maybe negotiations between the two have burned the bridge to a deal, but it wouldn't take much to build another one and make it happen. So this is another New York reporter hearing from sources that, at least a deal is still on the table. Now, yesterday we heard from reliable New York reporters as well, and Andy Martino and Tim Healy basically saying, hey, the Jays are progressing towards a deal. So now the big question mark is a deal with the Jays progressing? Has it kind of cooled off a bit? Or was this all just one big leverage play for Scott Boras in order to put pressure on the New York Mets to make a deal happen? And that seems to be, at least at this very moment, what it is. You can see this here. So far this morning, we have a prediction of ESPN and two yearning for a reunion articles, two basically saying reunion is possible from Puma and Joe and Jim Bowden for Alonso/Mets. Pretty clear what Boras' marching orders have been the last 48 hours. And again, we kind of covered that. I said that yesterday, that there is a good chance that this was just a leverage play. Now, it seems at this point, we're still not 100% sure whether or not it's leverage. But now, if the Jays end up getting one of Max Scherzer or Pete Alonso, ideally Pete Alonso, because now Jurickson Profar is off the board. He signed a 3-year, $40+ million deal with the Braves, which was a player the Jays were heavily involved in, though I do think any of these other guys are safer options than a Jurickson Profar. But as you start to look at what could go down here for the Toronto Blue Jays, the worst case would be if this was all just a leverage play. Scott Boras told the New York media to put pressure on the Mets by saying the Jays have advanced in talks. You have multiple different reporters coming out saying the Jays have, advanced near a deal. You have Hector Gomez saying that the talks, late last night, the talks are intensifying. And then if the Jays land Pete Alonso, that does not mean they're trading Vladdy. Their goal is for him to be a Blue Jay for the rest of his career. We'll have some Vladdy updates as well. But when it comes to the reports, Hector Gomez, he's hit or miss, but he's saying the talks are intensifying. Now, he did most recently get Anthony Santander right on the money. However, Pete Alonso is a Scott Boras client, so it's a bit of a, it's an interesting beast here now, because you're thinking about how this works with the Toronto Blue Jays system. And again, whether or not they're being used for leverage. The Jays did all they could when it comes to, Ben Nicholson-Smith and Schneider came out and said that the talks, while they're, involved in both of these guys, Scherzer and Alonso, the talks aren't advancing. When it comes to Max Scherzer, this was a brand new report this morning. Free agent Max Scherzer threw in front of teams at Cressy Sports Performance Pro Daily earlier in the week. I'm told scouts like what they saw. The Mets, the Yankees, the Dodgers, the Blue Jays, the Phillies, the Braves, the Cubs, and the Red Sox were all present. Scherzer has been in contact with Toronto. So a pretty big update here. A lot of teams were present to watch him throw. However, the Jays are the team that's most recently been in contact with Max Scherzer. We know the report came out that he was in contact with him via a Zoom call. And in that Zoom call, Scherzer basically said, I'm open to coming to Toronto, but you need to add more to this team because obviously at 40 years old, he's not going to come to a team he doesn't think can compete for a World Series. But now, if we all thought a deal was done, again, this was earlier in the week. So it just kind of, talks could have progressed since then. I do think Max Scherzer probably ends up being a Toronto Blue Jay just because I'm not exactly sure who of these other teams. I mean, of course, you see the Dodgers in there, maybe the Braves and the Phillies, teams that need starting pitching a little bit. But as you start to look at, but when they did the Zoom call, he said to improve the team. Now, they haven't made a move since then. They've been trying and they've been vowing to make a move for, of course, Pete Alonso and things like that. But a pretty big update there surrounding what actual other teams are involved in Max Scherzer. Now, we also had a Carlos Baerga bomb, quote unquote, last night saying, well, my people, it looks like Pete Alonso is coming to an end. The Pete Alonso novel is coming to an end. And Anthony Santander's signature opened the bank in Toronto and that they're going to sign Pete Alonso and then extend Vladdy now. Carlos Baerga was also one of the ones who said that Jurickson Profar is near a deal with the Blue Jays. That ultimately didn't happen. Am I saying that Baerga is correct most of the time? No. But I'm throwing this out there because it kind of just sheds light on the situation about how, at the very least, people are being used as leverage. But again, it all started with Doug Doucette yesterday with people, he reported that the Jays are nearing a deal with Scherzer. He reported all these different things. You have now 2 new ESPN articles kind of saying that there's a good chance he comes back with the Mets. It screams Jays being used as leverage so the Mets up their offer and then he signs with the Mets because that's where he wanted to be all along. But if he signs with the Blue Jays, we'll all be happy to be proven wrong regarding the leverage thing. But again, any report that drops will keep you up to date with all the latest news on that front. So make sure to let us know down below, or let me know down below, what your thoughts are on this. Do you think the Jays are being used as leverage or not? Now, one other thing to note here is that the Jays announced a bunch of non-roster invitees to spring training. I expect we'll see Alan Roden in camp, and once games begin, the organization loves Josh Kasevich as well. So just a couple guys here in case you missed it. So these are all the players that are non-roster invitees, and that includes Miles Straw, who they made the trade for. So some interesting ones. It's, of course, Phil Clark. We saw him in last spring training vying for a catcher spot. They obviously also have Christian Bethancourt, who's probably going to be on the Major League roster there to start the year. But you also have Hayden Jenger, some familiar names. Reiner Nunez, who we've seen in previous spring trainings, hit bombs. You have Miles Straw, who they made the trade for, Alan Roden, all these guys. Charles McAdoo, a couple prospects in there. So it's going to be exciting spring training. You get to see a bunch of the prospects. You get to see Alan Roden, who's, in his mid-ish 20s now. So he's starting to get up there in age. And as you start to get up there in age, his clock is starting to run out. So let me know down below what your thoughts are on this. Who do you think out of these players is going to make an impact in spring training? Who are you looking out for in spring training? Most importantly, let us know down below what your thoughts are on these updated Alonso and Max Scherzer reports. It seems like it's happening again. The Jays are being used as leverage. But either way, we'll keep you up to date with all the latest news. Thank you guys for watching. Cheers.